Welcome everybody. This is Tamiya's 1/35th scale M10 Achilles tank destroyer, and it's actually my first ever armor model. I got this kit at my local hobby shop for a group build where the theme was any vehicle based on the M4 chassis, also known as the Sherman. So what can be said about the M4? Well, the M4 Sherman was a medium tank designed and built by the United States for use in World War II. Designed in 1940 by the US Army Ordnance Department, the Sherman entered service in 1942 and was operated not only by the US Army and Marine Corps, but also by the British, Canadian, the Free French forces, and as Lend-Lease to the Soviet Union. After the war, upgraded versions would see action as late as the Yom Kippur War in 1973, which is actually quite impressive for such an old tank. The M4 would also prove to be incredibly reliable, being deployed in every theater of war, from hot and dusty North Africa, cold and freezing Northern Europe, to the hot and humid Pacific theater. And by 1946, more than 49,000 Shermans were produced, entering roles spanning from flamethrower tanks, artillery, engineering tanks, and of course the well-known medium battle tank that we've all seen in movies. One of the strong points with Shermans was its sheer numbers. If a German tank got knocked out, any surviving crew weren't guaranteed a new tank. But if a Sherman got knocked out or simply broke down, the crew could get a ride back to base, pick up a new tank, and be back in action for tea and medals later that day. Another advantage the Sherman had over his German counterparts was how easy it was to maintain. Replacing the gearbox could be done in the field by removing a few rows of bolts holding the transmission cover in place, and could be done in a few hours. In German tanks, this transmission cover was often welded, and replacing the gearbox often meant removing the turret to get access. I made a separate video showing how the exhaust was painted and installed, so if you want to check that out, check the link in the description or the card that should hopefully be appearing in one of the corners. Another way the M4 was optimized for easy maintenance was the suspension system. To replace a broken wheel or bogie, one only had to break the track, unbolt the entire suspension assembly, put in a new one, and put the track back on. This was also a job that would require very little manpower and could be done in a few hours. The designers consciously prioritized speed and mobility above armor thickness and the size of the main gun. Upon entering the war in 1942, it fared well against contemporary German tanks, but by the time of the Normandy invasion in 1944, it had been outclassed by newer German vehicles. Enter the British and their 17-pounder quick-firing anti-tank gun. The Ordnace quick-firing 17-pounder was a British 76.2mm gun with an impressive 55 caliber long barrel. Originally used with a split trail carriage, this gun had to be towed into position and wasn't very effective in an offensive role. At least until the British figured out that they could manage to fit it into the turret of an Ordnace Sherman, although with a few modifications, thus creating the Sherman Firefly. In the end, however, the turret would prove to be too cramped to sufficiently enjoy a cup of tea, and so the idea of the M10 Achilles was born. The M10 Achilles was the British version of the American M10 Wolverine. It wouldn't replace the Firefly, but would rather complement it. The M10 was faster and more maneuverable than the Firefly and Sherman, but at the price of less armor. With less armor overall, what little armor it had was concentrated towards the front. The biggest difference between the British and American version is, of course, the gun. Unlike the Americans, who saw the M10 as a tank hunter once it became clear that the Germans had gone on the defensive, the British still viewed the Achilles as a mobile anti-tank gun. The standard anti-tank gun used in infantry units in the British Army was a 6-pounder anti-tank gun, a small light gun able to defeat the more common German Panzer IV and Sturmgeschütz, but not the heavier Tigers and Panthers. The 17-pounder, however, was able to deal with Tigers and Panthers, but was less swiftly deployable than the 6-pounder due to its larger size. As a result, the British used the Achilles as a quickly deployable anti-tank gun, able to reinforce the position taken by infantry and to engage counterattacking German forces, while the slower towed 17-pounders were pulled up and dug in for more long-term defensive presence. This had the advantage of mitigating the weak armor protection of the Achilles, since a defending tank is often better camouflaged and is therefore able to fire the first shot. This was in line with the original design concepts of the vehicle, intended to blunt the German blitzkrieg attack tactics. The Achilles also had an extremely slow manually operated turret rotation, which made it vulnerable in offensive actions. But this was not a significant tactical limitation when the tank was used in a defensive role. Usually, the only time the British used the Achilles offensively was in support of tank units that did not have Fireflies or other offensive 17-pounders. that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. And if there was something you didn't like, please tell me in the comments so that the next video might be better. The kit came together beautifully and took a month and a half from start to finish, and it let me try out a couple of new techniques, and I learned a little bit of what not to do when it comes to armor modeling. If you'd like to see more from the build progress of this kit and also on ongoing builds, check out my Instagram, link is in the description. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later.